The neighborhood had always been a haven, a patch of calm nestled between bustling city streets. Morning sunlight filtered through the leaves of towering oak trees, casting long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawns. Birds sang in the distance, and the only sounds that broke the serenity were the occasional hum of a lawnmower or the soft rustle of the wind. It was the kind of place where you could sit on your porch with a cup of coffee and not hear a single car alarm or dog barking endlessly. It was peaceful, too peaceful. That's when she showed up. Karen, newly appointed to the Homeowners Association board, had a way of making herself noticed. It didn't take long for her to start weaving her way into every conversation, every small meeting, and then, inevitably, every home. At first, it seemed like just another HOA member trying to make their mark. But there was something about Karen that set her apart. It wasn't just the power she seemed to crave, but the cold, calculated way she looked at the world, as if it were a puzzle waiting to be solved by her. The trouble started innocently enough with a few minor changes to the neighborhood rules. Karen's first few emails to the residents were polite, too polite. They announced new restrictions about lawn care, house colors, and the importance of maintaining a pristine appearance for the neighborhood. No one thought much of it. After all, it wasn't anything outrageous. But then came the letter. An official decree that every homeowner was now required to surrender a spare key to the main gate of the neighborhood. It wasn't just about the key. No, it was about control. Karen's words on the letter left no room for debate. For the security of all residents, you are required to provide an electronic key to the HOA. Failure to comply will result in fines. At first, the protagonist, let's call them Alex, didn't give it a second thought. After all, they had lived in the neighborhood for years without issue. The idea of giving up a spare key to their gate felt wrong. It wasn't the HOA's property, nor was it any of Karen's business where the key was kept. But Alex didn't want to stir trouble. They ignored the letter. Surely, this would all blow over. Except it didn't. The next week, a knock came at the door. Alex answered, expecting a delivery or a neighbor, but instead found Karen standing there, clipboard in hand, her smile forced but insistent. The sharp gleam in her eyes made Alex uneasy. Something about her presence felt like a storm cloud gathering just over the horizon. Alex, I'm here to collect the spare gate key, Karen said, her voice dripping with thinly veiled authority. It's for the safety of the neighborhood. Alex hesitated, not sure if they were dealing with a power-hungry HOA member or a well-meaning neighbor who had simply lost touch with reality. I'm not giving you the key, Alex replied, voice steady but their pulse quickening. That's private property. I don't see why I should hand it over. Karen's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, Alex felt an unsettling chill. This isn't optional. The HOA has the right to access all properties if we deem it necessary for security reasons. And trust me, this will be a lot easier if you comply now. The word hung in the air, heavy and threatening, like a noose tightening ever so slightly. The silence between them stretched out, and Alex's gut twisted with an uneasy feeling. Something was off. But Karen wasn't done yet. She leaned in closer, her smile widening, as if savoring the discomfort she'd caused. You'll regret this, she said, turning on her heel and striding away. The HOA always gets what it wants. Alex stood there, stunned. What had just happened? The tension in the air was thick, and for the first time in years, Alex felt something they hadn't expected to feel in their own home. Fear. They watched as Karen disappeared down the street, her figure blending into the distance like a shadow. But that shadow was now a storm on the horizon, one that would come crashing down sooner than Alex could have ever imagined. The next few days passed slowly, but the feeling of unease never left Alex. Every time they walked out the door or checked their mailbox, the memory of Karen's threat lingered in the back of their mind, like a storm cloud waiting to burst. They tried to push it aside, telling themselves it was just an overzealous HOA member trying to flex her authority. But deep down, they couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't going to end quietly. And it didn't. 2 days after the confrontation at the door, Alex returned home from work to find an envelope wedged into the front door, the paper stiff and official-looking. The bold letters on the front read, "Urgent. HOA Notice of Compliance." Alex felt a cold shiver run down their spine. The storm was here. They pulled the letter free and tore it open with trembling hands. The contents were worse than they had imagined. It wasn't just a warning. It was an ultimatum. The HOA, led by Karen, was now demanding the key within 48 hours. If Alex didn't comply, they would face a fine of $500, an amount that seemed steep for something as simple as refusing to hand over a key. But that wasn't the worst part. The letter mentioned potential legal action if the demand wasn't met. The HOA had the power to escalate matters, dragging Alex into a costly battle. Alex stared at the paper for a long time, the words swimming before their eyes. Was this really happening? Was Karen really going to destroy their peace over something so trivial? The quiet neighborhood, which had once felt like a sanctuary, now seemed suffocating. It was as though Karen's shadow stretched over every corner, tainting what should have been a simple disagreement with a sense of dread. The phone rang, snapping Alex out of their thoughts. It was an unknown number, but something told them this wasn't going to be a random telemarketer. Hesitant, Alex answered. "Hello, is this Alex?" Karen's voice crackled over the line, all sweetness and calm. "I just wanted to follow up on that letter I sent. I'm sure you're very busy, but I wanted to remind you that we're counting on you to follow through with the HOA's request. After all, we're all just trying to look out for one another, right?" Alex's grip on the phone tightened. "I've already told you. I'm not giving you the key." Karen's voice dropped an octave, her tone suddenly colder, more calculated. "I'm afraid you don't understand, Alex. The HOA has more influence than you think. People like me can make life very difficult for people like you. All it takes is a few complaints, a few escalations, and suddenly, you'll find yourself in a world of trouble." The threat hung in the air like a ticking bomb, each word designed to unsettle. Alex's heart raced, a rush of adrenaline flooding their body. "Is that a threat?" they asked, their voice tight with restraint. Karen's laugh was short, almost rehearsed. "I'm just saying, it would be wise not to challenge the HOA. You don't want to make an enemy of me, Alex. Trust me." And with that, the line went dead. Alex stood there, the foam pressed to their ear, the coldness of Karen's words still ringing in their ears. The room felt smaller now, the walls closing in as if Karen's words had physically shaped the space around them. It wasn't just a petty neighborhood dispute anymore. This was personal. The following day, as Alex stepped outside to get the mail, they couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them. It wasn't the usual, comforting feeling of being part of a neighborhood. No, this was different. The street felt eerily silent, the stillness amplified by the oppressive heat of the afternoon sun. Then, from the corner of their eye, they saw it, a shadow lurking in the distance, just behind the row of houses. It was Karen. She stood there, across the street, watching. Her eyes were locked on Alex, her expression unreadable. Alex couldn't move, couldn't look away. A chill crept up their spine, and before they could react, Karen gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, an unspoken promise of things to come. Without a word, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the alley. The silence that followed felt suffocating, heavier than before. The unease was now palpable. Alex knew one thing for certain. This wasn't going to be over anytime soon. The stakes had been raised. And somehow, Alex was in deeper than they had ever imagined. The days blurred together. Each morning, Alex braced themselves for the worst, expecting a new letter, a new call, or even a knock on the door. The weight of Karen's threats hung like a dark cloud over everything. They couldn't focus at work, couldn't enjoy their evenings at home. Everywhere they went, There was the nagging feeling that Karen was watching, waiting for the moment to strike. Then, just when Alex thought the pressure couldn't possibly get worse, it did. One afternoon, as Alex was returning home, they noticed something strange. A car was parked across the street from their house, engine running. It was a dark SUV, windows tinted so that no one could see inside. Alex paused, heart thudding in their chest. The car didn't belong to any of the neighbors, and it was parked in the exact spot where Karen had stood the other day, watching. The hairs on the back of their neck prickled. Before Alex could even reach the door, the phone rang again. The number was unknown, but this time, Alex didn't hesitate. "Hello," they answered, trying to sound calm. "Alex, I hope I'm not interrupting anything." Karen's voice purred, smooth as ever. "I just wanted to make sure you're clear about the HOA's expectations. As I mentioned before, we need that gate key. And well, you've had plenty of time to think about it, haven't you?" Alex's grip tightened on the phone. "I've told you before, Karen. I'm not handing over the key. I'm not going to be bullied into it." There was a pause on the other end, a long, drawn-out silence that sent a chill down Alex's spine. Then, Karen's voice broke through, colder and more menacing than ever. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," she said, her words slow and deliberate. "I've given you more than enough chances, but you're not taking me seriously, Alex. This isn't just about the key anymore. You've crossed a line." Alex's pulse quickened. "What are you talking about?" "Let's just say I've got some connections," Karen continued, her tone dripping with threat, "and I can make sure that your life here becomes very difficult. I don't think you want that. We wouldn't want any complaints, would we? About the noise, the landscaping, or maybe the fence." The suggestion was subtle, but the underlying message was clear. If Alex didn't comply, Karen would make sure every little thing would be an issue. Before Alex could respond, Karen hung up. The doorbell rang. Alex's heart skipped a beat. Their stomach dropped. They hadn't even had time to process the last phone call before the next wave hit. They rushed to the window, peeking through the curtains. Sure enough, standing at the front door was Karen, flanked by two other HOA members. All three were holding clipboards, looking perfectly composed. The same chill ran through Alex's body, the sense of being trapped closing in on them. They couldn't ignore this any longer. With a deep breath, Alex opened the door, their pulse racing. "What are you doing here?" they demanded, trying to keep their voice steady. Karen's smile was tight, almost smug. "We're here to collect the gate key, of course. As I've mentioned, it's for security reasons. I'm sure you understand." Her eyes flicked over Alex's shoulder, studying the house with the cold calculation of someone who knew exactly how to make a person feel small. The two HOA members behind her stood silently, their faces unreadable, but the tension in the air was thick. Alex could feel it, could almost taste the hostility swirling around them. "I've already told you, I'm not handing over the key," Alex said, their voice firm despite the knot of anxiety tightening in their chest. Karen's smile faltered, replaced with something more dangerous. Disappointment, but also something darker. "You're making this difficult," she said, the words hanging in the air like a threat. "I gave you a choice. Now, I don't think you'll like the consequences if you don't comply." For a moment, Alex stood frozen, unsure how to respond. But before they could speak, Karen pushed forward, her demeanor suddenly more aggressive. "This will happen, Alex, one way or another." The pressure was unbearable. Karen's words felt like a vice tightening around their chest. It wasn't just about the key anymore. It was about proving who had control. Before the situation could escalate further, Alex's eyes flicked toward the street. The dark SUV was still there, parked across from the house. Only now, the engine was off, and a man was standing next to it, watching them. Alex's stomach twisted. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just a neighborhood dispute anymore. It was turning into something much more dangerous. Karen's smug expression faded as she realized Alex had seen the man. Her smile turned to a scowl. "Remember," she said, her voice low and threatening, "this is all your fault." As she turned and walked away, the two HOA members followed, leaving Alex standing in the doorway, feeling like the walls were closing in. The man by the SUV didn't move. He just stood there, watching. Alex shut the door, but the unease remained. The fear that something far worse was coming was palpable. The storm Karen had started was only just beginning, and Alex didn't know if they were strong enough to weather it. The days after the confrontation with Karen felt like an endless spiral of unease. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that every moment was being watched, every movement observed. It wasn't just the looming threats, it was the sense that Karen was always one step ahead, pulling strings from the shadows. The unease grew as Alex couldn't shake the image of the man by the SUV, standing motionless like a silent sentinel. The phone call came 2 days later. Alex was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the pile of paperwork they needed to sort through, when the shrill ring of the phone cut through the quiet. The familiar, unsettling feeling returned as Alex reached for it, their thumb hovering over the screen for a moment before answering. The number was unknown again. "Hello," Alex said, their voice carefully neutral. "Alex, darling," came Karen's voice, dripping with false sweetness. "I wanted to make sure we're clear on a few things. I'm not sure you understand the seriousness of this situation. I'm in charge here, not you." Her words were like a slow, deliberate poison, sinking into the skin. Alex's throat tightened. "I've made myself clear. I'm not giving you the key." Karen's laugh was quiet, almost amused. "Oh, Alex, you really have no idea, do you? You think this is about a key. It's not about that. It's about control. And you're losing. The HOA is in charge of everything here. And I'll make sure you learn that the hard way." Alex's pulse raced. "You can't just make up rules as you go. That's not how it works." "But it is," Karen responded coolly. "You'd be amazed at how much power I can wield, if I choose to. I can have your property inspected. I can call in every petty complaint from neighbors. I can have the city out here on your doorstep within hours if I want. You have no idea what I can do." The word struck Alex like a slap in the face, a cold wave of fear washing over them. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm not threatening," Karen said, her voice low and dangerous. "I'm giving you a chance to fix things before they spiral out of control. You should be thanking me. You're the one making this so difficult." Before Alex could respond, Karen hung up, the sharp click of the phone sending a ripple of dread through the room. The feeling of being trapped, of having no escape, suffocated them. It wasn't just about the key anymore. It was about something much bigger. And Alex was starting to realize just how far Karen would go to get what she wanted. The next day, the HOA showed up again. This time, it wasn't just Karen. She was accompanied by 2 city inspectors, official-looking men in crisp uniforms, carrying clipboards and making notes as they walked up to the front door. Their presence was intimidating, but the worst part was the eerie calm in Karen's eyes. She wasn't angry anymore. She was confident. "Good morning, Alex," Karen said, her smile unnervingly polite. "I hope you've had a chance to think about our conversation. As I mentioned, the HOA has the authority to inspect your property at any time. We've decided to do just that." Alex's heart pounded in their chest. "This is harassment," they said, stepping forward to block the door. "It's not harassment," Karen replied smoothly. "It's a routine inspection. You're not in compliance with several HOA codes, and if you don't cooperate, we'll start issuing fines. A lot of fines." Alex's breath caught. A lot of fines. The threat was clear. This wasn't about the gate key anymore. This was about breaking them down, piece by piece. With a final, triumphant smile, Karen motioned for the inspectors to move past Alex and into the yard. The men didn't hesitate, stepping over the threshold like they owned the place. The sense of invasion was overwhelming. This wasn't just about rules. It felt like a personal violation. "Don't worry, Alex," Karen called, her voice sweet with a veneer of fake concern. "We'll make sure everything is up to code, and you'll thank me when it's all fixed. Trust me, I'm just looking out for your best interests." Alex stood there, seething, watching them walk through their property, the sickening feeling of being trapped growing stronger with every passing second. This was no longer about a neighborhood dispute. It was a game, and Karen was playing for keeps. The worst part? Alex knew they couldn't back down. If they did, they'd be giving Karen everything she wanted. But standing up to her meant facing a nightmare they couldn't yet see the end of. As the inspectors made notes and moved around the yard, Alex felt something shift inside them. This wasn't just a fight for the key anymore. It was a fight for everything they'd worked for, everything they'd built in this quiet neighborhood. But what was Karen's endgame? And more importantly, how far was Alex willing to go to stop her? The sense of invasion had settled deep within Alex's chest, twisting and gnawing like an insidious weight. Every inch of their property felt like it had been examined, violated under the guise of routine inspection. The inspectors, though courteous on the surface, had swept through the yard, scribbling notes and pointing out tiny, insignificant flaws that could easily be ignored in any other neighborhood. But here, with Karen in charge, it was clear that nothing was safe. As the inspectors left, nodding to Karen with forced politeness, Alex felt the full weight of their gaze. The quiet satisfaction in Karen's eyes made it worse. She had won again, and she wasn't done. "Looks like we got a few things to fix, Alex," Karen said, her voice laced with false sympathy. "Nothing too serious, just a few code violations you'll need to address. If you don't, the fines will start piling up. And we wouldn't want that, would we?" Alex clenched their fists, feeling the hot rush of frustration flood their veins. It wasn't just about the key. It wasn't about the fines. It was about the control, the relentless tightening of the noose around their life. Karen had turned something simple into a full-blown battle for power, and Alex was fighting alone. "I've had enough," Alex muttered, more to themselves than anyone else. "Oh, I don't think you have," Karen replied, her smile turning into something crueler, more knowing. "But you will. I'm just getting started." Alex stood in the doorway, the oppressive heat of the day mixing with the simmering anger that had been building for weeks. The words Karen had spoken echoed in their mind. "I'm in charge here." They could feel the truth of that statement settling into the pit of their stomach, suffocating them. As Karen turned to leave, Alex made a snap decision. Enough was enough. They weren't going to stand idly by while Karen destroyed everything they had built. The HOA had gone too far, and Alex was no longer just defending their property. They were defending their dignity, their peace. Without thinking, Alex grabbed their phone and dialed a number they had been avoiding. It rang twice before the voice on the other end answered. "Hello. Detective Grant," Alex said, their voice steady but tinged with urgency. "I need your help. It's about Karen Harris and the HOA." There was a slight pause. "What's going on, Alex?" Alex took a deep breath. "She's been harassing me, using her position to control my property. I've had enough. I need to know what I can do to stop her." Detective Grant's voice softened. "We've been tracking complaints about her for a while now. It's not the first time she's crossed the line, but it's always been tough to build a case. You're not the first person to report her, but I understand why you're asking for help. Stay calm. Okay, we'll take it from here." The relief that washed over Alex was like a balm to the burning frustration. Finally, someone was listening. Finally, there was a chance to put an end to this madness. But as Alex hung up the phone, their eyes moved to the street again. The dark SUV was parked across the road. The man was there too, standing in front of it, arms crossed, watching. Alex's stomach twisted with dread. The car had been there for days, a silent sentinel, always present, always watching. It felt like Karen's invisible hand was still reaching out, controlling everything, even in the moments when Alex thought they might be safe. Suddenly, a knock at the door. Alex's heart skipped a beat. Could it be Karen? Had she come back to escalate things again? Alex opened the door, their breath caught in their throat. But it wasn't Karen. It wasn't anyone from the HOA. It was a delivery man, holding a large envelope, looking confused. "Delivery for Alex Carter," he said, handing over the envelope without another word. The return address was unfamiliar. Alex took the package and closed the door, eyes scanning the envelope with growing suspicion. There was no note inside, only a single sheet of paper with a single sentence. "You can't escape me, Alex. I will always find a way." The words were written in bold, heavy letters, each stroke of the pen a deliberate act of intimidation. The handwriting was neat, calculated. Alex's hands shook as they held the paper, the weight of the words sinking in. It was a threat, one that made their blood run cold. Karen wasn't just using the HOA to control them. She was taking this to a whole new level. But Alex wasn't going to let her win. They weren't going to let fear dictate their life any longer. As they stood in the doorway, envelope in hand, Alex made a vow to themselves. Karen might think she had the upper hand, but she was wrong. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. The words on the letter haunted Alex as they lay in bed that night, the thin piece of paper trembling in their hand. "You can't escape me, Alex. I will always find a way." It was as if Karen's presence had seeped into every corner of their life, twisting and suffocating, an invisible hand pushing them further into a corner. Alex couldn't sleep. Every noise outside sounded like footsteps. Every shadow in the corner of their eye felt like a watchful gaze. The dark SUV still sat across the street, parked where it had been for days, like a constant reminder that they were not safe, not in control. They needed to do something bigger than just fighting Karen at the door. The walls were closing in, and Alex was running out of time. The next morning, Alex decided to take a different route. If Karen was going to push them to the edge, they would push back. But this time, they wouldn't be alone. After a quick breakfast, Alex grabbed their phone and called Detective Grant again. "Detective, it's me." "Alex," they said, their voice tight but determined. "I'm not waiting anymore. I need to know how we can take Karen down. She's gone too far." There was a slight pause on the other end, then Grant's voice softened. "I understand, but I need you to be careful. Karen's not the type of person to back down easily, and if we're going to make a move, we need solid evidence. It's not just about her threats anymore. It's about everything she's done." "I've got something," Alex said, their voice steady despite the knot in their stomach. "I'm going to need your help with it, but I can't do this alone." A beat passed. "What's your plan?" Alex hesitated. It felt strange, discussing this with someone else, but it was the only option. "I've been watching her. The SUV. It's been parked outside my house every day. The guy who's been with her, I think he's been following me. And now, the letter. I don't think she's just threatening me. I think she's setting me up for something worse." Grant was quiet for a moment, processing the information. "You're right. We've gotten intel on her before, but nothing concrete. This is starting to look like something we can work with. Let me make a few calls. We'll set a plan in motion." The phone call ended, and Alex exhaled, feeling the tiniest bit of relief. Finally, someone was taking them seriously. As the day wore on, Alex's mind raced with possibilities. If Karen was really trying to intimidate them into submission, Alex had to outsmart her. They weren't going to let her control them anymore. The fear she'd instilled in them had started to fade, replaced by a burning desire for justice. Later that afternoon, Alex decided to take a walk to clear their head. They needed to focus, think strategically. But as they stepped outside, they noticed something new. Someone had put up a sign on the front lawn. The large, bold letters read, "This property is under surveillance." Alex froze. The sign wasn't there yesterday. And it wasn't the HOA's standard property notice either. This was different. The handwriting was unmistakable, sharp, deliberate. It was Karen's work. The sickening realization hit them. Karen had escalated things. She wasn't just threatening them with fines or inspections anymore. She was watching their every move, marking them as a target for the neighborhood to see. The message was clear. She's the one in control, not you. Just as Alex was about to march back inside, the sound of footsteps caught their attention. They turned, heart racing, and saw a figure approaching from the sidewalk. It was the man from the SUV, the one who had been lurking outside their house for days. His posture was relaxed, but the tension in his eyes told another story. He was here, and he wasn't leaving without saying something. Alex stepped forward, standing tall despite the dread coursing through their veins. "What do you want?" they demanded, voice steady. The man didn't answer immediately. He just watched them, as if measuring the words he was about to say. "I'm just here to deliver a message," he said, his voice low and even. "Karen's got a lot of people watching her back. You're making things difficult for her, and she doesn't appreciate that. But if you play along, if you give her what she wants, maybe things won't escalate. Maybe you'll walk away with something." Alex's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" The man took a step closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm telling you this because you're running out of time. People like Karen, they don't stop until they've destroyed everything. And I'm not sure you're prepared for what's coming next." The words hung in the air like a threat, heavy and suffocating. Alex's mind raced. Was this man a part of something bigger? Was Karen truly using people to do her bidding? And how far would she go to make sure Alex lost everything? Without saying another word, the man turned and walked back toward the SUV, leaving Alex standing on the porch, heart hammering, thoughts spinning. They didn't know what Karen's next move would be, but they knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a battle for a gate key. This was war. Alex stood frozen on the porch, watching the SUV drive away, the thrum of the engine fading into the distance. The strange encounter with the man had left them shaken, but something inside them had shifted. They weren't afraid anymore. They were angry. They had been pushed too far, manipulated and watched, and now it was time to fight back. The letter, the surveillance, the threats, everything had led to this moment. But it wasn't just about protecting their home anymore. It was about taking back control, about showing Karen that Alex wasn't someone she could break. It was time to turn the tables. They pulled out their phone and dialed Detective Grant again. "This is it," Alex said, voice tight with resolve. "I'm done waiting. I'm going to get Karen on tape. I want her exposed. Whatever I have to do, I'll do it." Grant's voice came through steady, calm, but understanding. "Are you sure you're ready for this? It's going to get ugly." "I don't care," Alex shot back. "She's been using the HOA to ruin my life. I'm going to make sure she can't do this to anyone else." There was a long pause on the other end before Grant spoke again, his voice softer. "All right, we'll set up a sting. You'll need to get her to make a direct threat, something we can use against her in court. I'll have a team ready." Alex's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the moment when everything would change. But as the plan started to come together, an unexpected wave of doubt hit them. Would it work? Could they actually get the evidence they needed? Was Karen really as dangerous as they thought? Or were they overreacting? No, the truth was clear. Karen had already proven how far she was willing to go to control their life. There was no turning back now. That night, Alex went through their security footage again, replaying the hours of video from the cameras around their property. They scanned the footage for any sign of the man, for any new clues that could help with the sting operation. And then, as if on cue, they saw something that made their stomach drop. Karen was standing in front of their gate in the footage, late, in the dead of night, wearing dark clothing to blend in. She wasn't alone this time. Two men flanked her, one of them the same man who had been parked across the street every day. They were talking, but Alex couldn't make out the words. The men seemed agitated, gesturing toward the gate, toward Alex's house. Alex's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a confrontation anymore. It was a full-blown escalation. The fact that Karen was willing to send her men out in the middle of the night, no doubt with more sinister intent, confirmed what Alex had feared all along. This was bigger than they had imagined. They weren't just fighting for their home. They were fighting for their safety. The next day, Detective Grant arrived with a small team of officers. "We got everything in place. You're going to be the bait, Alex," Grant said, looking grim. "When she shows up, we'll have everything we need. We'll make sure she's caught in the act." Alex nodded, but their nerves were a twisted mess of anticipation and dread. The plan was simple: get Karen to show up, get her to make a threat on tape, and then the authorities would take over. But in the pit of their stomach, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. As night fell, the tension in the house was palpable. The air felt thick with expectancy, like the calm before a storm. Alex waited, eyes flicking to the window every few seconds, heart hammering with every shadow that passed by. The streets were silent, but the stillness only seemed to heighten the suspense. This was it. This was the moment everything would either come crashing down, or it would slip through their fingers. The minutes dragged on. Then, just as the clock struck 10:00 p.m., Alex saw a shadow move down the street. The SUV. Karen. It was happening. They took a deep breath and whispered to themselves, "Let's end this." The street was quiet, too quiet, as Alex crouched by the window, watching the familiar shape of Karen's SUV roll down the road and park directly in front of their house. The headlights cut through the darkness, casting long shadows on the lawn. Alex's heart pounded in their chest, a mixture of dread and anticipation building with every second. The plan was in motion now. They had the cameras, the officers hidden in plain sight, ready to move at the first sign of Karen's wrongdoing. But none of that mattered if Alex couldn't stay calm. A low knock echoed through the house, sharp and deliberate, followed by the sound of Karen's voice outside. "I know you're in there, Alex," she called out, her tone dripping with superiority. "Let's talk. You've made your point, but you can't keep running from this forever." Alex took one last breath, steadying their nerves. The moment had arrived. They opened the door slowly, just enough to see Karen standing there, her eyes flickering with that same cold, controlling gleam. The man from the SUV was behind her, standing like a silent sentinel. But it wasn't the man that made Alex's blood run cold. It was Karen's words. "You've been making a real spectacle of yourself, Alex," Karen said, her voice casual, as though she were discussing a minor inconvenience. "All this nonsense with the cops, the complaints, it's all unnecessary. I just wanted you to understand that I'm in charge here. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will all be." The words hit harder than Alex had expected, but they stood firm. "I'm not your pawn, Karen," Alex replied, their voice steady despite the fear gnawing at their insides. "And I'm done letting you control me." Karen's lips twisted into a cruel smile. "Is that so? You think you can take me down with a few cameras and a fake sting operation? You're delusional. You've been out of your depth from the start." The man behind Karen shifted, stepping forward as if to back her up, but before he could speak, Alex stepped back into the house and slammed the door shut. The sudden noise caught Karen off guard, and for a split second, her eyes flickered with surprise. But it didn't last long. The door opened again, but this time Alex was holding something, a small device in their hand. It was a recorder, hidden in plain sight, quietly humming as it captured every word. The plan had worked. Karen's eyes narrowed. "What's that?" "Evidence," Alex said coldly, walking toward her, the recorder raised high enough for her to see it clearly. "Every word you've said, every threat you've made, it's all recorded. You're not in control anymore." For the first time, the smug smile on Karen's face faltered. Her gaze flickered to the man behind her, then back at Alex, panic creeping into the corners of her eyes. "You think you've won," she spat. "You're nothing. Do you really think anyone's going to believe you? You're just some nobody trying to make a name for yourself." Her words dripped with venom, but Alex stood firm, knowing that this was the moment when everything would change. They weren't alone anymore. The officers, positioned in the shadows of the street, had heard every word. Before Karen could react, the sound of police sirens blared through the silence, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow on the street. The man behind Karen looked around, his face pale as he realized what had just happened. "Karen Harris," one of the officers called out, stepping forward from the shadows. "You are under arrest for harassment, stalking, and attempting to intimidate a resident." Karen froze. Her eyes flashed between the officer and Alex, but it was too late. The truth was out, and the walls had come crashing down. The lies, the manipulation, it all came to light in that single moment. "You thought you could control me," Alex said, the weight of the truth heavy in their voice. "But you underestimated me." Karen's face twisted with rage. "You think this is over? This is just the beginning," she hissed, but the officer's hand was already on her arm, pulling her toward the squad car. As Karen was led away, Alex felt a strange sense of relief wash over them. The nightmare was over. Karen's reign of terror had ended. But as Alex watched the officers drive away, a strange thought lingered at the back of their mind. Was this truly the end? Or had they only just begun to scratch the surface of something far darker? The sound of the police car's engine faded into the night, but Alex knew one thing for certain: they had won this battle, and they weren't going to let anyone ever take control of their life again. The truth always comes out, and today it had come in the form of a recorder, a sting operation, and the bravery to stand up for what was right. But in the quiet aftermath, as the adrenaline began to wear off, Alex couldn't help but wonder who else might be hiding behind the veil of power, waiting to strike when least expected.